Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Here.
Mr. Roger Updegrove.
Here.
Mr. Zawada.
Here.
Mr. Brophy.
Here.
Ms. Steeroff. Mrs. Kratz. Ms. Nyman.
Here.
Mrs. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Panarello.
Here. Ms. Daroff, you have something to say?
Yes.
Good evening. Tonight I would like to update the community the loss of several of our great educational people that have died in the past several weeks. Chris Schlegel, junior high west social studies teacher. Barry Irie, gym teacher, junior high west. He coached football, basketball, baseball, and was a member of the 1991 high school state championship team. Bonnie Seymour, fifth grade teacher at Boyertown Elementary, and Margaret Quigley, the mother of transportation director Brian Quigley. Our deepest condolences go out to all these families during this difficult time. May God bless them all. Thank you.
Rise for the pledge, please. Board of School Directors held an executive session on Tuesday, February 27, 2024. The topic was legal. The session lasted approximately 45 minutes.
At this time, I would ask for Dr. Maori to please come up to the podium and do some introductions of Middle School East.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dorsha. Is this mic on?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dorsha. And welcome to our school board members. You are at Middle School East, which is a great place to be. And the reason why I open the opening remarks with that is because that is basically a term that has organically evolved over the last few months here at East. As many of you may recall, I came here January of last year, so it's been a little over a year. And part of my introduction and part of my get to know you plan was to meet with all staff members. And in doing those meetings last year, almost every one of those meetings either started or ended with talking with our teachers and them saying on their own, I love being here at Middle School East. It's a great place to be. And after being here for about a year, I can see why that is. And first and foremost, it's our students. The wonderful things that they do, the accomplishments they have academically without question, and of course extracurricularly with sports and the activities highlighted by our musical this past fall, and a variety of clubs and ways that our students are really gaining real world experience out there while they're in our halls of Middle School East. Our staff is phenomenal. Many of our staff members are here year after year because they found a home and they have been a part of this culture and building the culture over the time. Of course, our community and our families that we work with as well, all three aspects come together to create an environment, a school environment that's a great place to be. And one of those highlights are with us tonight. So when we were notified at the beginning of the school year that we were going to be hosting tonight, Ms. Moyer said, we would like a focus to be on your special education department. And with that, we wanted to highlight one part of our special education department, and that's our life skills program. They do some phenomenal things with our students here, and we have a special treat for you because we have a few of these members that are going to speak to you as well. So I happily and eagerly turn the microphone over to Ms. Selena Gaines, who is our life skills teacher, along with a few of our students who are going to present a few things about our life skills program.
Thank you so much for having us here this evening. As Dr. Maori said, my name is Selena Gaines, and I'm the Life Skills Support Teacher here at East. So the Life Skills Support Program, as stated on our website, is designed to support students with a disability who require services primarily in the areas of academics, functional, vocational skills, and community-based instruction necessary for independent living. There we have this here. So there's our crew right there. Our students do have unique individual needs, which we address through a variety of ways. And as you can see by the list on the screen, our students are able to grow and progress in many ways due to the amazing team, and that's within our school building and beyond and throughout the community. So in addition to our academics, I have 3 students who are very excited to share some of their favorite parts of our program. So I have Kayla, Ivan, and Violet here, and we are going to start with Ivan.
Hi, my name's Ivan. I love science. We do lots of experiments and we use different science tools like microscope. I go to 7th grade science and we also do science in our life skills classroom. On Fridays, we make and deliver coffee, hot chocolate, and tea to teachers around the school. We sell snacks that we buy at the store or we make in our classroom kitchen. We learn job skills and we work on money skills. I love doing the East Barista because we get to work with each other. In material processing with Mr. Brass, we make a lot of cool stuff and made new friends. This year, we made bridges, cars, pencil holders, and we made key chains on the 3D printer to use for our locker keys. We use machines and tools. It's the best class ever.
Thank you, Ivan. So many of our students in the Life Skills program do participate in chorus. As you can see, some of our students amongst the chorus at the concert in the winter. This year, we also had a new addition of band. Mr. Agatone and some of the band members from East come to our classroom once per cycle and offer band lessons, and that's been a great opportunity because a lot of our students love music and playing instruments. Violet, what would you like to share?
I like to see my friends. I like to play drums.
Yes, Violet, we play a lot of drums in band, right, Violet?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Then we also have a new addition program this year with therapy dogs. So 2 to 3 days a week, we have some of our therapy dogs come in and meet with our students. Violet, what do you think of the dogs?
I like to dogs.
Hug
Hugs
the
the dogs. The dogs are my friends. I like to read to the dogs.
Yes, we read to the dogs, right? You did a good job. Nice job. I'm gonna keep this, okay?
Okay.
All right, good job, sweetheart. All right, and as Violet said, the students enjoy reading to the dogs, which is a great opportunity. We've also seen a really great impact as far as expressive language. Some of our students that don't initiate language talk so much more when the dogs are there. So it's been fantastic. We're excited to continue that. Next, for the final several slides, we have Michaela.
Hello, my name is Michaela. At
Art with Mr. Fagley and Mrs. Diaz is my favorite class. We make a lot of awesome projects like snow globes and clay leaves. Some of our projects are out in the lobby. I go to general ed class, which is a big class. Some of my friends go to adapted gym. Mrs. Wallace works with our physical therapist, Mrs. Bennett, to keep everyone healthy and strong. Our class has a kitchen and apartment area. We learn how to cook, do dishes, clean, do laundry, and other skills that will help us grow and do things by ourselves. My favorite thing to cook is breakfast. I am really good at cracking eggs. We learn a lot when we go out in the community. We practice park and safety shopping skills, and we practice ordering our own food and paying all by ourselves. Each time we go, we get better and better. When we go out to eat, we sit with our friends at our own table. The teachers sit at their own table. My favorite place to go is Five Below. We do our Christmas shopping there and then wrapped all of our presents for our family.
All right, that is our final slide. At this time, I would like to thank you all for having us this evening. I also want to thank Ivan, Violet, and Michaela for helping me share our program with you. But I also want to tell you guys that you did an amazing job. And these guys all work super hard every day, and we're just really proud of them. So I'd like to give them a round of applause as well. Thank you so much.
Do any of our board members have any questions for Mrs. Gaines and her children, her students? Go ahead, Ms. Nyman.
I do. The dog, whose dog comes in here? I mean, I think that's great, but
So Mrs. Bainey, who is our emotional support teacher at East, she has connections with the dog therapy community. So she has several teams that come in. We have Creed come in and Letty, and this week we also had Wiley. We have Mr. Tom. I don't know his last name. He's Mr. Tom.
Devlin.
Devlin?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mrs.
I know. With Letty.
well, thank you very much for working with these children. That they are fantastic. You ladies and young men deserve a big round of applause.
They do. Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Scott?
Even though the surveys that went out to the students and teachers and parents have already gone out, I do appreciate the time here just to express my opinion and concerns about some of the things. I felt that the survey for parents and teachers were very good, actually. I thought the questions were good, and I'm hoping that the responses will be good and maybe help us at an administrative and board level. I also am asking and wondering how Panorama will submit the responses to us from the parents and the teachers. Will it be their actual raw data, the actual comments that they make, or are they going to formulate some type of summary? And my preference, I don't know about the rest of the board, but my preference would be to see the actual responses that our parents and teachers did make. The survey, I'm just going to focus on elementary. I feel like that was the one that I found to be, I don't know, in my opinion, just not appropriate for them. I felt that the elementary survey would be a little complex for them to answer given their lack of experience in the world of academics. and it was most likely a little confusing for some. The questions on the elementary survey were concerning, and some of the examples of those were, how often do you worry about violence at your school? Now, this is elementary, folks, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. If a student is bullied in school, how difficult is it for them to get help? How likely is it that someone from your school will bully you online? How often do students get into physical fights at your school? This is elementary. In brief, questions also were asked, are you worried about math? Are you worried about family relationships? Are you worried about whether the teacher likes you? All of these questions will cause some of our students to feel very unsafe. Worry, violence, fighting in our elementary school, really? Our students have a problem. We have mental health students. We have mental health issues with our students, and these issues are getting younger and younger. We as adults pose these questions to 8th, 9th, and 10-year-old children, keeping that fear rhetoric going in our school environment. How do some of them feel even about coming to school? If our students are struggling, Boyertown already has protocols within the school to deal with these issues. Why do we focus on crippling feelings that can harm a child emotionally? Why not keep a positive approach with positive questions such as, what do you like best about your teacher? Instead of asking, does your teacher notice when you are upset? How are you doing in math? Instead, the survey asks, are you worried about your math class? Again, the anxiety. The last point I want to make, but it solidifies the anxiety issue that is being enforced on so many levels, not just here, but outside of here. And it is, again, my opinion. The question was asked, what best describes you? Girl, boy, preferred self-described, prefer not to answer. If we follow the science of the human anatomy, we will see that there are only 2 sexes, and that's typically what that age group will see. This question was very misleading, and the choices for the answer were as well, for they will cause a child to question their own identity at such a young age and start the avalanche of chaos to form in their mind. Some kids won't be affected at all, but statistics have shown more and more are. This can be viewed as a form of grooming. It is called cognitive manipulation. There are so many heartbreaking stories out there right now, stories of young children ages 3, which shocked me, to 18, who have found it necessary to transition. And now their lives, their health, and their futures have been stolen. And many of them regret what they have done, and they are angry at the adults in the room that helped them. Some are suing their doctors. They are called detransitioners. We don't want to be part of this community. We don't want to be part of the problem here. People have glamorized, we see it on social media, the thought of transitioning. And they can do whatever they want. I'm not judging anyone who transitions. What I am saying is, don't assault our children at such a young age with questions like this. Leave them alone. Let the kids be kids. Let them find their own way. As they get older, they will settle into their true identities without the influence of the education system. Our influence should always be to prepare our kids academically for their future, to be informed citizens ready to give back to society on whatever path they choose. We will see the results of this survey and what purpose it will serve for the betterment of the academics of our school. And as a board overseeing the education, I feel this should cause us to closely review things within the school that align with these ideologies, if there are any. Place the focus on academics and the benefits of extracurricular, and move forward with concise policies for what is presented in our classroom. Also moving forward with possibly designating an outside organization to perform a curriculum audit if needed. And also to remember that all surveys should always be approved by the board before they go out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Next, we have the BASH proposal for Bear Stadium outfield. Mr. Smith.
Okay, thank you. First of all, great to be back at Junior High East. My 3 years here, 40 some odd years ago, it was always a safe place in a world of, at the time for me, was chaos. So it's always good to be back here, and I'm glad to see that the kids are thriving here. Good evening, my name is Ross Smith. I am now 2 months into my second term as the president of Boyertown Youth Baseball Limited. I'm the first person to be in twice. So tonight we approach you to talk about our commitment to Bear Stadium. 42 years ago, Bear Stadium, a little longer than that actually, 44 years ago, Don Speck said to the chairman of American Legion Baseball for the nation, hey, why don't we host the World Series? And he said, where are you going to host it? And he said, well, at Bear Stadium. And George Rulon said, where's Bear Stadium? And he said, I have no idea yet. At that point, the people that had been in charge of American Legion Baseball for a while got together and said, we need to find a place to build the stadium. And so there was some people had some land. They decided, were they going to build it out of town? Were they going to build it in town? They really thought the best place to build it was in town. The school district had a lot. They approached the school district about building Bear Stadium where it is today. So the town could enjoy it. And we hosted the 1982 World Series. We won the World Series at home. At the time, it was a great story. It's still a great story. And it brought the community together. It brought people together to volunteer. The one thing I love about this community is the fact that when we want to get something done, we come together and we get it done. And that's always been a highlight of what we've always tried to do. We try to cooperate with the community. My first term as president, we put in a in-ground watering system. That was my big improvement. Tonight, I'm in front of you to ask for the go-ahead to the first project we've identified in my second term, which is to replace the outfield fence from foul pole to foul pole. Our eventual goal is to replace the fence all the way around, except for in the front where the sidewalk is. That's pretty new. But the rest of the fence is 42 years old. The outfield fence, there's parts where it's getting close to where we're going to need to replace it, so we've decided to do it now. Part of that issue was the fact that for years we've hung heavy wooden signs from the fence to sell advertising to make money to run our baseball team. That's no longer an issue. We now have fabric signs that we attach right to the fence. They don't weigh anything. The wind blows right through them. It is great. So you have the estimate in front of you. The estimate came in at about $26,000. I don't know, the one thing I have to check, I don't know if it includes the yellow top on the fence. If it doesn't, we'll take care of that too. We're going to replace the fence. We're not asking a thing from you. We're just asking for the okay from the school board to donate the fence for that. We have some new board members who appreciate Bear Stadium, our unique partnership with the school district and the community. And we are looking into some other projects that we could be very excited down the line to come to you and say, hey, we could do this, or we're going to go out and be very aggressive in fixing our 42-year-old facility. We still have a first-class baseball facility, And we want to keep it that way, going along with our new turf fields, our football stadium, our softball stadium. We want to keep all these facilities first class. So that is what I'm asking of you tonight. Are there any questions?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for your service and for doing what you do.
Thank you.
This is all in alliance with what we already have there. It's nothing, the height isn't changing or anything like that?
No, everything's based on the current conditions that they are now. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure. Okay.
Just a reminder to our school board, when you are speaking, please speak into your microphones, because Evan continues to make, faces at me that he can't hear you. Thank you, Evan.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
So we won't be putting this on for any, for board approval. The purpose for Mr. Smith to come out was to just make sure that everyone was okay with the fact that, from the Legion point of view, that they're going to take care of our outfield fence with the yellow top on it. I guess, I forget what that's called. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith, again. And now I would turn it over to Ms. DeNicola.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to give an update on our budget, and Mr. Shield will provide some facility updates in regards to capital projects we would like to recommend for the 2024-25 school year. I'm going to review the historical state funding for the district. I'll review where the 2024-25 budgeted revenues and expenditures stand at this point. Then I'm going to provide a little more detail on what's included in the information technology portion of our general fund budget, and also what's included as far as our school budgets within the general fund budget. I will review the real estate tax increase scenarios. I'm also going to touch on some projected program expansion costs, review the budget uncertainties, talk about the key budgetary dates, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Shield for the proposed capital projects. So from a historical basis, our basic education funding has grown at a level from 2011-12 of $13.71 million to a projected for 24-25 of $21.35 million. That seems significant, but over the span of those years, not a very significant increase. The increase from the 23-24 year to what's proposed by Governor Shapiro is an increase to $21.35 million from a level of $18.77 million. So a fairly significant increase to the level that we have not seen in prior years. Again, this is the proposed budget by Governor Shapiro, and it will take the House and the Senate to approve and move that along until we know that what our final state funding numbers are for basic education. From a special education funding perspective, there has been some growth, but not as great as we've seen in basic education. In 2011-12, the district received $3,157,664 for special education funding. For 2024-25, it's projected at $4,913,631, so roughly a $200,000 increase over 23-24. Again, the 2024-25 numbers are based upon Governor Shapiro's proposed budget. I wanted to touch on where public education in Pennsylvania stands and the reliance that different school districts in different areas place on local revenues as the source of funding student education. So you will see urban schools, 17% of their revenue comes from federal sources, 44% comes from state sources, and 39% comes from local sources. You will see suburban districts like the Boyertown Area School District, where 4% of our revenues come from federal funds, 28% comes from the state, and the bulk of the funding is coming from our local tax base at 68%. In rural districts, 7% of the revenues come from the federal government, 44% come from the state, and 48% are borne by the local taxpayers. As a total of all school districts across the state, 8% is funded via federal dollars, 36% is funded via state dollars, and 56% is funded via local revenue. Our local revenue funding numbers align with what the state averages are for suburban districts. The statewide growth in expenses from 2011-12 to 2021-22 has been dramatic as it relates to the mandated costs of pensions and charter school tuition. In that time period, the pension cost to public school districts has grown 367.2%. Charter school tuition costs have grown 133.9% over those years. Keeping that into correlation with what's increased in salaries, salaries have only increased 15.7% over those years. And from a gross perspective, the U.S. inflation rate over that time period has only grown 31.2%. So you can see that the mandated expenses, those things that the district has no control over, have had the largest growth factors and will continue to be a very large portion of our budgets. So to review the budget projection that was presented at the last presentation, local revenue currently assumes a 3% tax increase. It would equate to local revenue of $99,336,631. State revenue is budgeted at $42,756,961. Federal revenue is budgeted at $1,444,000 for total budgeted revenue of $143,533,592. Our regular education expenses are budgeted at $67,638,074. Special education is budgeted at $24,916,909. Vocational education is budgeted at just over $2 million. Other instructional programs are budgeted at $190,156. Our pre-K program is budgeted at $541,773. The pre-K program is currently fully supported by the pre-K grant funding that we receive from the state. Our support services are $40,045,717. Our co-curricular services are $1,962,023. Our debt and other dues and fees expenditures are $7,187,426 for total budgeted expenses of $144,509,358 and a projected decrease in fund balance of just under $1 million of $975,766. I want to, throughout the budget process, provide some more information on what's making up the general fund budget. There's a large portion of our general fund budget that goes to information technology. So I wanted to give you an idea of the not staff and benefit related pieces of information technology, but some of the other things that our technology department, what is in their budgets to support the district students. So professional services for emergency services, whether it be for technology-related items, staff professional development, and E-rate consulting, the budgeted amount is $12,950. Equipment rental for the district-wide copiers is $123,907. All of the telecommunications, which includes phones, fax line, cell phones, all of that, postage and travel, is budgeted at $217,840. Office supplies are budgeted at $6,000. Technology supplies and software fees are budgeted at $790,509. I do want to touch on that included in that number is $125,125 that's budgeted to replenish the Technology Reserve Fund. On tonight's agenda, you will see a recommendation for approval of the purchase of computers from Dell to replace staff computers that are outdated. Those funds come from the Technology Reserve Fund, but we will be budgeting as part of our general fund to replenish those funds. So as those computers need to be replaced, the money is there to replace them. And it's not a large one-time hit in any one given year. And then other capital technology equipment for students and staff is budgeted at $803,563 for the 2024-25 informational technology budget of $1,954,769.
The capital technology equipment for students and staff, isn't that like every 4 or 5 years?
It would be, so we would build the
So
cost.
this is going into a fund also,
Yep.
like, okay, thank
Yep.
you.
That's not something that it appears the district has done in the past, but we're trying to build sustainability within all our programs. And this enables us to, now that the district is one-to-one basically, with all its computers and all the technology in place, we're now building that platform to sustain that. As far as school building budgets, the school building budgets are for classroom supplies, office supplies for the principal, if there's any professional, like limited professional development for teachers. Those are the dollars that the individual building administrators contribute to the general fund budget. Building budgets are based on the per pupil allocation that the district has used for quite a number of years. For each elementary student, it's $125 that's provided to the individual building. For each middle school student, it's $160 per student, and for the high school, it's $205 per student. So the 2024-25 budget amounts for the high school is $421,755. Middle school east is $130,880. Middle School West is $112,480. Boyertown Elementary is $88,236. Colebrookdale Elementary is $29,450. Earl Elementary is $30,762. Gilbertsville Elementary is $66,225. New Hanover Upper Frederick Elementary is $70,787. And Washington Elementary is $59,687. Again, these amounts are all included within our general fund budget, but you can see the amounts that the individual building administrators have to spend on their individual building needs. No, you can ask.
Question on here. If they don't use this amount, what happens to it? Or if they go over that amount, what?
Well, I don't allow them to go over,
Okay.
unless it would be in like an emergency situation. If it's unused, that's just less expenditures for the year, and it could be, lead to a budget less use of fund balance, or a possible increase to fund balance if we're not fully expended our
Or
budgets.
does it roll over into their next year's budget that
No.
possibly they could?
It does not.
Okay.
They do have the ability to plan for larger expenses, if they know they are going to need, say, a piece of playground of equipment. I have allowed the ability to budget that each year until they have enough, and then we will retain that and roll it forward, so when they want to replace, say, for instance, playground equipment, those dollars will be there.
I know in prior years, the other administrators that were here, we used to do fund transfers. And if they had money left over at the end of the year and they wanted iPads for next year, they could buy them at the end of the year and use that money, whatever.
We don't allow that to happen. When the budgets are this tight, we're really focusing on what the students need. What are their needs versus nice to haves? We really, they have to really support what they're purchasing. We have to make sure it fits within the OTL plan, within the IT plan. So we make sure there's not that frivolous spending or the potentially unnecessary spending.
I mean, if it was something that they saw they were going to need for the next year, I would not have a problem with it if it was honestly a necessity. But thank you for working on that.
I just wanted to review the Act 1 index for 2024-25. Again, that limits, it's the limit by which we can raise taxes. The adjusted index for 2024-25 for Boyertown is 6.4%. So that means we cannot raise taxes more than that 6.4%. We did pass the Act 1 resolution indicating we would not go above that for 2024-25. The 2024-25 real estate tax increase scenarios. The current millage rate is 30.814 for 2023-24. For 2024-25, the tax increase scenarios are as follows. At 0%, the millage rate would remain at 30.814, and the estimated real estate tax revenue would be about $84.195 million. At 1%, the millage rate would be 31.122 mils, and that real estate tax revenue would be about $85,036,000. At 2%, it would be 31.43 mils and related revenue of $85,878,000. At 3%, it would be 31.738 mils and revenue of $86,719,000. At 4%, it would be 32.046 mils and revenue of $87,561,000. At 5%, it would be 32.354 mils and related real estate tax revenue of $88,402,000. And at the max of 6.4%, the millage rate would be 32.786 with real estate tax revenue of $89,583,000. As it relates to the individual homeowner, for each $100,000 of assessment, a 1% increase would be an annual increase of $30.80. A 2% increase would be $61.60 annually. A 3% increase would be $92.40 annually. A 4% increase would be $123.20. And a 5% increase would be $197.21. The tax increase scenarios, the budgetary impact that would have based upon where the budget sits today. The budget today is currently sitting at a 3% tax increase. If it was a 0% tax increase, we would have a budget deficit of $3,500,469. At a 1% tax increase, we would have a budget deficit of $2,658,901. At 2%, we would have a budget deficit of $1,817,334. At 3%, we would have a use of fund balance or budget deficit of $975,766. At 4%, we would have a budget deficit of $134,198. At 5%, we would have a budget surplus of $707,369, and at the max 6.4% increase, it would be a budget surplus of $1,887,750. There has been discussion about full-day kindergarten, adding additional teacher at our middle school for foreign language purposes. So I wanted to give the board some information on what that would look like as far as an addition to the expenditures of the 24-25 budget. If the district were to add full-day kindergarten, it would cost the district in 2024-25 an estimated $1,106,750. If we were to offer full-day kindergarten to what the district would establish as the students with the most need, we estimate that it would cost the district $466,000. The cost to add one additional teacher to any program is approximately $115,000. That includes salary, benefits, and all the costs of carrying the employee. And if we had to contract for an additional mental health support or social worker, we do contract for some of those needs right now. If our needs would grow, we would need to contract for an additional. That would be approximately $85,000 for the year. So as we're looking through the budget, those are the costs that we would have to entertain for additions, or, you know, if you would make a deletion to a program, likewise, you would save approximately $115,000 per deletion. But we're not proposing any deletions to programs. We're looking to maintain programs. And ideally, if we have the revenue to support it, I know Mrs. Torsha and we would be promoting full-day kindergarten for all.
I know I'm being a pest, but how comfortable are you, Mrs. Torsha, on our mental health support and social workers for our students?
We're making progress in the area, but we are definitely lacking with the support of a social worker. We have one social worker that supports our entire school district, and that has been funded through the PCCD safety security grants from 22 to 24. We do have an opportunity for more money beginning with this year. To continue that contract, but if we were to grow something, social worker would definitely be a benefit. The amount of support that the current social worker is providing to our families, our homeless families, our families who are just challenged by socioeconomic challenges, they provide a lot of supports, helping families get to doctor's appointments, dental exams, physicals, just things that they can't typically get to. Our social worker has been helping to support transportation for a family who is homeless and is doubled up somewhere. It's been challenging. This particular person is doing an amazing job for the district and has really put a lot of supports in place. So I would say that if we could add something, social worker would addition, so that they could support the elementary level and have somebody supporting our secondary.
Is there more funding out there for that we can get another person? Because I'm sure this person is overloaded.
There is funding, however, the funding runs out and we don't know if they're going to continue to keep funding. Now, right now they have been, and we've been fortunate, and but being able to have someone in-house, and I know that Ms. DeNicola has been working quite closely with Dr. Horton with respects to the counseling supports and social work, and I know she was ready to speak to that as well. But having someone consistently knowing that we can rely on really would be the best for our families. Do you have anything else to add?
I'll just add that Dr. Horton is really looking at less reactionary measures and more preventive measures that can really assist students. There is a cost to those measures, but she's actively looking for grant resources that can, help us get those programs off the ground. We do have preventive measures, but that can always be improved. Too often, some of the grants that come down are reactionary. So we want to really develop something that's more preventive measures and proactively, helping our students. And Dr. Horton's been doing a tremendous amount of research into grant opportunities for that.
Just to add that we also work very closely with the ministerium and Pastor Bob Mockamer. He has been, leading a group, and they have been also supportive of making sure that we have funding in place to support, really anything along those lines where students are in need. So I have to, again, our community has come in place to help build things and put things into place for, our athletics, but they also are here building connections for us and supports, to treat our students and the mental health problems that we're seeing. So I just wanted to give a shout out the same way with the United Way, same way with the Boyertown Foundation. Everybody has really been pitching in and helping us as we continue to look to, put curriculum and, resources in place to help to not have a problem and help to educate in advance. So, sorry.
For 2024-25, again, we have some budgetary uncertainties. The Governor Shapiro's proposed funding includes basic education funding of $21,346,633 and special education funding of $4,913,631. So it will remain to be seen where that budget develops over the next few months at the state level. Charter school costs continue to be an ever-increasing cost for all districts across the state. There is some proposed legislation out there that would greatly help the Boyertown Area School District, as most of our students in external charter schools are enrolled in external cyber charter schools. That will remain to be seen as well to see where that might develop at the state level. We actively manage our healthcare costs. Right now, we're budgeted at a 10% increase. We will look at claims again throughout this budget process, and if we can drive that estimate down, we will do so. We have a number of high-cost claims that are currently increasing our costs, but as we look deeper into those diagnoses, we might be able to drive those costs down because they may not continue as far as claims. Our key budgetary dates for 2024-25 is we must adopt our proposed final budget.
One question quickly.
Yep.
On one page, we have one additional teacher in any programs, 115,000. And on this page, we have average annual cost of additional teacher of 137,000. Why the discrepancy?
So the average annual cost would be based upon the highest level of the most recently additions, but the most common cost is 115,000.
Okay,
Because
so
we're not hiring people at those higher columns.
So 137,000 is the high number.
Yes. So for 2024-25, our key budgetary dates would be to adopt the proposed final budget by May 30th. It's projected at the May 14th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Then we would adopt the final budget by June 30th, 2024. And right now, I think it's projected for the June 25th, 2024 board meeting. I will now turn it over to Mr. Scheel, and he will discuss the proposed capital projects for 24-25. I will tell you that two of the projects, Boyertown Elementary and New Hanover Upper Frederick, the roofing projects for those are ones that we will be submitting as part of our grant application to the state. There's a maximum of $5 million that's going to be available for each approved project. We would have a 25% match contribution that would come from our capital reserve, but we are actively participating in that grant opportunity. My understanding is that they will tentatively look at maybe some projects in May, but it might be as long as September before we would hear on if we were awarded the grant or not.
Good evening. So for the 24-25 capital projects, recommendations. First, for district-wide, we recommend a tractor replacement. We currently have 2 older Kubota tractors, one with a loader, one without. It's impossible to get parts anymore, so when they break down, we have no way of replacing parts on them. So we'd like to replace that with 1 new tractor and have a loader, a backhoe, and forks, because we don't have a forklift in the district. So that would help with when we need to unload tractor trailers and whatnot with equipment, because right now we have to pay extra for shipping to make sure they have a lift gate. This would prevent that because some of our schools do not have loading docks. Second, to beef up our security, we're looking at a cloud-based camera system. What this does, it allows us to add cameras without having to add actual physical memory. The memory is stored within the cameras, and then they go to the cloud, and we're able to access it that way. This prevents us from having to spend money on NVRs and recording, actual physical recording equipment. That's $257,000 for that. We would like to replace the 2 mini splits that feed our server room. They are old and they are in bad shape. They ran the refrigerant lines underground instead of through the building, which caused them to rot out. When we looked at fixing that, it cost almost as much as replacing them. So instead of putting a lot of money into an old system, it's best to just put in a new system. The JACE upgrades, which we've been doing now for 3 years, will be finished up with this year with our final 2 JACEs. We're upgrading them so that when they update, they are unable to handle the newer updates and the faster speeds, so it causes them to crash. So this would be the final 2, and then all the JACEs will be upgraded. The loading dock at the high school, currently the top layer is crumbling and cracking and in really bad shape. So we're looking at replacing just the top, jackhammering it out and repouring that. At Middle School East, where we're looking at replacing the chillers. The chillers have reached end of life. We constantly are putting money in due to refrigerant leaks. The VFD that runs them, we had one that actually blew a coil, caused a significant amount of damage. We need to replace those. The cost of that is $1,098,500. The lead time on that is almost a year, 52 weeks. So if it gets voted on today, if we order today, it would still be a year until that project could start. The sound system I have it out of order. Washington Elementary, that needs to be updated. I actually have 2 sound systems on here, that's why I was confused. That's for security. We want to make sure everybody can hear us if we have an all-call. So we've been upgrading them through the district. East was last year, Washington and Cobrookdale are this year. The library rooftop unit at Washington is older. It's air conditioning only. There's a heating coil within the duct, so it's a lesser cost unit, and that's at $55,000. The window panel upgrades, which we've been doing every year, we were going to replace 24 panels this year and then 23 panels next capital projects, and then they're done. All the panels will be replaced at that point. At Boyertown Elementary School, we're looking to replace the terracotta pipe that runs from the building to the manhole. There's roots growing in it and it's cracking, so we dig that up, put new pipe in there, and replace that. The HVAC roofing system, as Mrs. Denicole has said about the roofing project being part of that grant, so we have to figure out what we're doing with the roof before we can figure out what we want to do with the HVAC system. In the meantime, I'm getting pricing on BRF versus boiler chiller system to see which is the best avenue to go for longevity, energy efficiency, and cost, initial cost. The sound system at Cobrookdale, it's an older system. Same thing with the all-call. We want to be able to reach all students. EPDM roof at Earl. Last capital projects, we did the foam. This is the rest of the roof at the EPDM. There's a smaller section of it. That's $400,000. Finishing up the carpet to VCT tile. for this year. That will complete that project. At Gilbertsville, we're looking to do the foam roofs, which is $980,000, and that roof will be completed as well. So that will give us Gilbertsville and Earl roofs are completed, and they all have 15 years on the foam. I believe it's 20 on EPDM and 25 on the coating. Water heater in the kitchen at New Hanover. That needs to be replaced due to the aging condition. And then also at New Hanover, the fuel tank outside, because we run our generator and our boilers on this fuel tank, it's considered a fuel, not heating oil, so it has to follow DEP fuel regulations. That changed in 2018, and for some reason we slipped through the radar and didn't. So when I had it inspected to meet the criteria, we failed on multiple levels. To remedy that, we have to replace the piping. We have to put, because it's underground, we have to put a sump and an anti-siphon valve in, and we have to put a new tank gauge in to monitor it, to ensure that our interstitial monitors we don't lose oil or water doesn't get in. So that completes my projects with a total of $3,184,500. Are there any questions?
Of course, it'd be me. You said New Hanover also needs a new roof, correct? That was the 1 million?
Yeah.
Yep, that would be
Okay,
another
that's
roof that we would put
not
as
on
part of
here,
the
so
grant
we need to-
application. Yep.
Also, we really do need to do the HVAC system and whatever else at Boyertown. I had complaints about that building. It's 55 years old. Nothing's been done to that heating, air conditioning. So before we have a major issue, that is very important.
Yep, I agree.
I'm told some students were in there with coats on this past winter. I don't want to see that happen again.
No problem. Anybody else? Thank you.
We're waiting on quotes from the roofing contractors for both of those projects.
BCIU report, Mr. Brophy.
The BCIU meeting's not till next week, so I would actually like to move the BCIU report from this meeting until the meeting at the end of the month going forward, because otherwise I'll be reporting a month late. So.
BCTC, Mr. Updegrove.
Yes, the last meeting was a week ago, and we have another meeting scheduled as of tomorrow, I think, unless it's going to be canceled. But that meeting was, just basically the function of the BCIU and the fact that the kids are making flanges for the space shuttle yet. So that's pretty interesting. Maybe I can get my hands on one of these days.
I'd like to go up and watch.
And bring it in to show you. But flanges for the space shuttle launch pad. Not the O-rings, but the flanges. So if I can get my hands on one, I'll bring it in and show it everybody. But it's probably top secret. I shouldn't even talk about it.
At this time, I would ask Mrs. Landis and Mrs. Townsend, and we have, yes, Mrs. Joyce, yes. They will be doing a presentation on our steel science standards.
Good evening. I have with me this evening Jennifer Joyce, who is our K through 8 curriculum supervisor, and Rochelle Town, our grade 6 through 12 curriculum supervisor. So they overlap in the middle to provide that continuity from elementary to middle to high school. We're going to be sharing with you this evening the STEELS planning process and next steps. Tonight is part 1, and our next meeting we'll be sharing part 2 with you, as there's quite a bit involved in the changes that the state is putting in place with our science standards. So we just want to make sure that the board has the opportunity to gain a full understanding of what those changes involve and what that looks like for our teachers and our students. There we go. On this slide, I'm not going to click into each of these right now, but we have a couple resources for you that are linked, and I believe you have a copy of the presentation. So the first one, called the STEELS Hub, is a resource that has a lot of the different links for the standards and some of the different pieces that go along with the science standards K-12 for the state of Pennsylvania. The second one is a link to the PDE website, where it gives a little bit more background on the timeline. This has actually been a couple-year process already in the making. So before I even arrived officially on the scene in the Office of Teaching and Learning, Mrs. Town and Mrs. Joyce have been working on this with my predecessor, Dr. O'Barrow, as well. So the timeline of the PDE shifts are on that website. It's been a couple years in the making already, and we're working towards the 25-26 school year, where the science standards will be mandated K-12 across the state. The last document comes from the Pennsylvania Science Teachers Association, and it's just a frequently asked questions document that helps to explain the STEELS standards in a little bit more detail. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Mrs. Town to you, and she's going to share with you some of the changes that we can anticipate. Oop. There we go. It's not liking me.
Okay, so over the last several decades, science education has become increasingly important as a means to remain competitive in the global economy. Both the federal and state governments have taken numerous actions to address the need to improve and implement science education consistently across the United States. Beginning in 1990, the publication of Science for All Americans led the efforts to bring this consistent scientific standard for K-12 schools. That was followed by benchmarks for science literacy in 1994, the National Science Education Standards in 1996. And then in the 2000s, the federal government mandated the use of science assessments through No Child Left Behind and Every Student Succeeds Act. And that mandated science assessments so that we could see student achievement and growth in science. Most recently, as you can see on the slide, there are 2 phases for our most recent change in science education across the United States. Phase 1 was the development of the framework for K-12 science education. This framework was created by science experts, educators, and policymakers across the United States. They came together and collectively created this new vision for science. As a result, the next generation science standards were then developed based on that framework for science education and that vision that they created in together collaboratively. The next generation science standards actually was a state-led effort. 26 states came to the table along with, again, science experts and educators and policymakers to create these K-12 science standards, which is what's on the next slide here. So what is NGSS? Again, it's that K-12 science standards, really looking at what students should know and be able to do to be scientifically literate. The NGSS was based on that framework, and the framework itself and NGSS are based on the what we know with the best current research, what is best for science teaching and science learning. If you take a look at the map, you can see that currently almost all states have either adopted NGSS, those standards as is, or they have standards that are very closely aligned to the framework itself. And NGSS really focuses on taking three-dimensional learning so that students are looking at core ideas in science, but also they're looking at practices and they're looking at concepts and bringing those together to demonstrate their understanding of science. So to kind of sum up what NGSS is, and it's really about this shift in instruction. So we go from this idea of having students know a body of knowledge, a list of facts, to really demonstrating their proficiency in science. And that verb is really key there. Wanting students to move from the note-taking skills, the body of knowledge, the recall, to having the application and demonstration of their understanding. And they do that through the scientific practices, concepts, and core ideas. So you might be wondering, what does NGSS have to do with us and the state of Pennsylvania? Well, our current standards are from 2002, were adopted in 2002, and like other states, Pennsylvania was also looked and recognized that standards needed to be updated based on current research and our understanding of best practices. So in 2019, the process began, went through the legislature, and were adopted officially July 2022. New standards documents were released in 2023, and full implementation is expected in the 2025-2026 school year. The assessments, PSSA assessments, and the biology keystone will also be updated in that same year. So the same year of implementation, that same year, the test will also be reflective of the changes with the standards. All right, you have to look at this and appreciate it if you're a Steelers fan, which there are two of them in the Office of Teaching and Learning, and there's two of us who are Eagle fans. So I don't appreciate this as much as some people behind me here. Steels actually was, they chose that because they were talking about science, technology, and engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability, but the individual who came up with Steels is in fact from Western Pennsylvania. So he did go with Steels because he loved the idea, I think. So Steels are our new science standards. That is the name. And you can see in the name, not only is it about science, but it's also technology and engineering, and also includes an element of environmental literacy and sustainability. And what does that mean? Very similar to NGSS, which is why we want you to understand NGSS, the Steele standards are also focusing on students understanding and demonstrating their understanding of science through inquiry, problem solving, critical thinking, and authentic exploration. So that's really talking about that shift in instruction, right? Really going from that knowledge, that body of knowledge, the list of facts, to inquiry-based learning, to problem solving, critical thinking, and authentic exploration. And that's seen in the standards themselves with the verbs that you see utilized. Also, Steele standards emphasize the relationship and the connections between the different disciplines. So the connections between science, between technology and engineering, and also the environment, and creating those connections and that relationship. Here are the specific strands that you will see in the Steele's standards. In science, you will see life science, physical science, and earth and space science. So those are the strands that are those areas that knowledge is focused on those three strands. In technology and engineering, you're really focusing on that problem solving and the design learning. And then there's also an aspect of environmental literacy and sustainability. Pieces of that look at agriculture, that's very authentic to Pennsylvania, and then also looking at how we can sustain the environment.
It was really difficult for Rochelle to share that Steelers slide, so thank you, Rochelle. To take a look at how the standards have changed, we thought we'd break it down a little bit to kind of do a comparison of our current standards and how the new standards are shifting a little bit. When you look at our current standards, it really is just a list of content and processes. They're separate pieces, two different documents. When you look at our current or the new standards that we're moving to, those items have been blended together. So while we have what we call a standard statement, NGSS actually uses something called a performance expectation. And when we take a closer look at some of the documents, you'll see the difference in how our new standards really show what our students should be able to do. It's not just about a collection of knowledge, it's what you're doing with that knowledge. Again, our current standards are often something that we can assess with multiple choice questions, and I'm going to test you on this in a little bit. And it's a focus on vocabulary definitions. The new standards are moving to something where it's really how you apply that knowledge in novel situations, which is a little more complex than what we would see on a multiple choice test. Engineering is not always included in the current standards that we have, but there is a bigger focus on that in the new standards that are coming our way, and they're integrated into the standards documents as well. Finally, one of the bigger pieces is we are not given a direct connection with our current science standards to other content areas. So when there's a math connection or a language arts connections, it's something we kind of find, or it's just incidentally there. Now there's a very direct and explicit connection, and the standards documents actually show us what those connections are. And those connections are important and help our students understand that science is not this silo of something I do for X amount of time, however many times a week. It really is something that's spread across everything we do every day. And just think of the technology that we all deal with starting up our meetings and how we're getting there. These are all things that impact our day-to-day life, and it's not just something that's done in isolation in our classrooms. So here's your test. I did give you a hard copy there, so it was a little easier to see. But what we want to take a look at is this idea of a shift from how just having to understand vocabulary and definitions is different than what these new standards are moving us to. So you've had that in front of you, and you do have the questions there. This is the montylation of Traxaline. This is going to be a test today for me. This is my payback for giving her the Steelers slide, I think. So as you read that kind of to yourselves, I'm not going to read it out loud to us. Can someone indulge me and tell me what is Traxaline? Anyone jump in and tell me? Yes, Mrs. Scott, thank you. I will try that one. Yes, Traxaline is a new form of Zionter, maybe we'll call it that. Where is Traxaline montyled? Sorry.
And a serostoner.
That was very brave of you, Mrs. Scott. I appreciate it. I'm taunting. Anyone else willing to be brave?
Serostana.
It's montyled in serostana. Very good, thank you. Yes, and as you can see, do we know anything about Traxaline? No. We don't. We would have it in front of us and not know what it was. You're answering questions not based on your understanding of what that material is, how it functions, how it's quazzled is the next question, and what's important about it. We don't know any of that. Your ability to just really kind of decode those words and kind of pull out of context what some of those, in fact, not just context, it's very blatantly stated there, as Mrs. Scott had pointed out. You're just reading it off the page for us.
Right.
What our new standards are trying to shift away from is the ability to evaluate our learning at this level. We want to make sure that our students aren't just getting the definitions down, but that we're applying them in ways that help them understand the world around them. Thank you, I appreciate it. And a little vocabulary summary before we move on to showing you some standards. Just a reminder that NGSS is Next Generation Science Standards. They are nationwide. They're adopted as is by many states, but many states have chosen to modify them and make them their own, just like Pennsylvania has done. 3D learning, you're going to hear this mentioned quite a bit. That's when we're integrating, again, those ideas of scientific practices. Those are things that scientists do every day in their work. They're things that, honestly, when you see the list of them, they're things that we do every day, even though we aren't necessarily scientists. The disciplinary core ideas, that's the actual content. That's where we're looking at the things our students need to know and understand. And then the cross-cutting concepts are things that we see that can apply across multiple areas, things like patterns. Where do we find a pattern? Well, that can happen in math, that can happen in ELA, and that can happen in science and social studies as well. So those things are intertwined into one standard statement. It's a very big change. And again, STEELS, representing our science, technology, engineering, environmental literacy, and sustainability standards. That is a mouthful, so STEELS is much easier for us to reference. Those are the new science and technology standards for Pennsylvania, and they were based on the NGSS. So a little summary on what all those mean for you. So I'm going to show you a couple new documents from STEELS. It's a little tough to see up there, but a little guidance on how to read these. This is actually our curriculum framework documents, and when you take a closer look at what's happening here, they're giving us a performance expectation. So the standard is listed there. You see those three colored boxes in the middle? Those are those three dimensions we talked about. So the science and engineering practices, the disciplinary core ideas, and the cross-cutting concepts. Up at the top, we did have underlined those same components above in the standard itself. A couple things I want to point out for you right now, though, is that PA-specific content. This is one thing Pennsylvania did to make sure that we're bringing it back to what's relevant to our students in the state. So for this example, which, with my glasses, I can't see from this far, but this, I believe, is a first grade standard, and at the bottom, I believe it mentions that we need to draw attention to things in the state like hemlock and white-tailed deer, I think it mentioned up there. So state-specific plants and animals that we're talking about. You also see career readiness mentioned there. That's part of our Future Ready Index, is ensuring that our students meet the career readiness requirement each year. Here on the standards document, we're seeing how a career connection can be made with just this one standard. So if we look at how they're changing, what you're seeing here in front of you is actually our current standards. So for an example in first grade, one of the things that we're looking at is plants. I don't think that was me. Thank you, Mr. Sally. It's just identifying the parts of a plant and their functions. Part of what we talk about is how plants and animals rely on things like their environment and the sun, water, all of those things to survive. So if you notice the verbs here, we're investigating and identifying and describing. Those are our verbs here. This is hard to read, and again, I blew it up for us. So the standard statement that's there, the performance expectation. Students who demonstrate understanding can use materials to design a solution to a human problem by mimicking how plants and/or animals use their external parts to help them survive, grow, and meet their needs. Big difference there. Some of the same understanding when it comes to animals have parts that help them survive. Think about like a turtle shell, how that helps a turtle survive in the wild. It's protecting some vital organs. The application here could be, what is something you could design to help a human protect themselves when they're playing dodgeball or playing a game outside? That would be the application level we're taking this to. So what did you learn about animals and how certain parts of their body help protect them, and how is that going to be used to solve a problem? Now, here's the real test, because I'm going to show you a high school standard. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, the standard document continues, and it adds in some critical pieces such as the environmental literacy and sustainability components, and then that whole section at the bottom are the connections to ELA, math, social studies, all those other pieces that we want to draw connections to for our students. Now here's my test. So the 9th through 12th standard. So when we take a look at this, when we're talking about DNA, and again, looking at the verbs, we're explaining how information is passed from parent to offspring. We're describing basic process, explaining how crossover happens, explaining mutations, and how that alters genetic information. Again, with the curriculum framework here for the new STEEL standards, students who demonstrate an understanding can construct an explanation based on evidence. Just think about that for a second. Construct an explanation based on evidence for how the structure of DNA determines the structure of proteins which carry out the essential functions of life through systems of specialized cells. So again, we're not just looking at a basic how to identify DNA or show where DNA is, what does it look like. Construct an explanation based on evidence is one of those practices that we're asking students to work on. And again, you'll see with the secondary standards, we get the same information about the connections across multiple content areas. And I think I'm turning over, yep.
Yep. So as you can see, there are some pretty big changes that are happening with these science standards in terms of what we are teaching as well as how we are teaching it. So that requires some pretty big learning for not only our students, but our staff as well. So this slide just shows you how will science education change with NGSS. So I'm not going to read it to you word for word, but on the left-hand side, you see some things that science education will involve less of with these changes, and some things on the right that science education will involve more of as we make these shifts to the STEELs. What I want you to notice here, which is now highlighted on the screen, is how many times you see the word student or students. On the left-hand side, we only see it one time, but on the right, we see it quite a bit, because one of the things that is a big part of these shifts is just how much students are actively engaged and involved in their learning. So really that problem solving, that critical thinking, that inquiry-based work that they're doing in the experimentation, the students are really actively involved in that work. And so we wanted you to notice that there. We have been working with our teachers along the way to help them gain their understanding, because just as we're doing for you, we want to make sure they have the background knowledge of what these changes entail before we can really fully dig into our curriculum updates and the resources that we need to use to make that happen. So really helping to solidify the understanding for our professional staff K-12. So on one of our recent professional learning days on February 16th, we had met with all of our teachers who are teaching science K-12 and worked with them on helping to understand science in practice. And so all of the groups got to do a fun activity. If we had more time, we'd have you do it yourselves, because everybody really enjoyed it, but we're just going to show it to you for the sake of time. So basically, here are the materials that everyone had. They had a handful of M&Ms, they had some warm water or room temperature water, and a cup and a stopwatch. And they basically put some water in the cup, put the M&Ms in there, and then they observed them over a period of time and recorded some of their notice and wonderings of what was going on with those M&Ms. And then we have a couple examples here of how those who participated in the activity drew some models to demonstrate their thinking. So here's one example. And then there's another one, and you can see they don't look exactly the same in terms of how they showed their work, but similar concepts of what they experienced and what they saw in that activity. It was very interesting to people as the color kind of came off first, and then gradually the M's started floating up to the top, and just thinking about some different questions that generated that led to and guided the conversation and the discussion that went on from there. So just a fun little activity to get them thinking about the way that science phenomena are shared, and then the questions that are generated from that lead to a science unit. And then this just shows you some sticky notes with some of the questions that were generated from that activity as just a fun way to model some of that understanding in the way that STEELs instruction works. So we're going to take just a couple minutes to look at the STEELS work and the timeline of what we've done so far here in the district, and then we'll talk to you about what our next steps will be for part 2 in a future presentation.
So as Mrs. Landis referenced at the beginning, we have been looking at the new standards for some time now. Last school year was really a year of OTL, learning about the science standards from PDE. We were at a conference and there were many just sessions that helped us understand the STEEL standards and expectations for implementation, expectations for the districts. We also started discussing the shifts in instruction and giving an overview to our teachers this year. We started with department leaders. We developed a science committee that met over the summer, actually multiple times, which was really great just to get us starting thinking about what's our vision and our goals in science education, what are some of our needs as we make this shift, and just looking at some initial resources through this time. So this year, 2022-2023, was just a time of learning, understanding these shifts in instruction and in the curriculum. And so we were able to go to quite a few conferences at BCAU. Montgomery County had a science expo, which again exposed us to these shifts in instruction and in our science standards. This school year, maybe. There we go. We shared that needs assessment with our science teachers that we had created with our science committee. We also did some more professional learning with teachers, as Mrs. Landis shared, looking at the anchoring phenomena and the driving questions. And we also took a closer look at the scientific and engineering practices and what does that mean, what do they look like, as well as the cross-cutting concepts. Where you really see that shift is in intentionally explicitly making sure students understand those practices and the concepts. So we wanted to make sure our teachers had time to look at those as well. We continue to have attend additional conferences at the BCIU training, brought some of our teachers with us. We had specifically an introduction to technology and engineering standards with our technology and engineering teachers. We brought elementary teachers to a STEELS immersion training at the BCIU, and then we also had our middle school teachers attend a BCIU training as well. And then we had an initial training with Activate Learning to start looking at Open SciEd as one of the possible resources.
In terms of our future work and what we need to accomplish in our remaining year and a half before full implementation, for the remainder of this year, we are looking to pilot some resources, hopefully yet this school year in the middle school, at least with 6th and 7th grade. Activate Learning is a company that can kind of come alongside Open SciEd and some other resources that are out there to help provide professional learning, and they also supply science kits of the materials that are needed to explore some of the phenomenon and do some of the activities and experiments. So we're looking to hopefully look at some of those pieces yet this year. At the elementary level, we're looking at a couple different resources. There's one called Activate Prime that's through the Activate Learning, as well as FOSS. You may have heard of FOSS kits before. FOSS is a resource that we have used in the past in our elementary science classrooms. They also have resources that they state are NGSS aligns. So we're reviewing some of those resources at the elementary level to try to further determine which is going to be the most effective for us to use to help implement the new STEELS standards. And then we're continuing our professional learning with curriculum instruction and assessment with our staff K-12. And as we're looking at these things and doing these activities, really thinking about how these pieces interact with each other, how the different science courses in many cases overlap a little bit in some ways with each other, and making sure that everyone has the full knowledge that they need to successfully implement the new standards with our students. We're also looking to evaluate potential resources so that we can hopefully soon determine what we will be able to utilize with our students and unpack some future units. We've dug into many of the units already, and we're continuing to look at those alongside our teachers so that we can look at where we need to head by the 25-26 school year. This summer, there is definitely some work to be done over the summer as well. We're going to need to make a research purchase. ESSER funds can be used up until September of 2024. So we're looking to hopefully potentially use some ESSER funding to help us with some of our science purchases. And there's also the potential that we need to create some curriculum documents and resources as well over the summer with some of our teachers. And then next school year, because we really don't want to wait until the last minute, it's really beneficial if in this coming school year we can begin to instruct some science classes using some of the new materials so that the teachers have an opportunity to experience them, and the students have an opportunity to experience some of them before the year where they are going to be required to fully implement and be assessed on those new standards. The one exception to that is high school biology, because the biology Keystone exam will not change until the 25-26 school year. So we've had some conversation with the high school science department about not wanting to begin instructing biology next year with the new Steels materials if the Keystone exam next year is not aligned to Steels yet. We want to make sure that we do that in the appropriate order. And then the 25-26 school year, again, is when full Steels-based curriculum is mandated by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So that's a lot to accomplish in the next year and a half. In fact, if you look at this as of, I believe, today, from now until July 1st, 2025, when we're required to do this, we only have 475 calendar days, 248 school days, and only 10 professional learning days remaining between now and then in order to get this work accomplished. And again, we have a part 2 coming up because we do want to share with you a little bit more about the curriculum resources that we're exploring, some of the curriculum and instruction needs, how this aligns to the comprehensive plan. You may remember that one of the pieces in the comprehensive plan that you had voted on and approved in the fall was Steels training for our teachers as part of our professional learning plan. So, we want to make that alignment clear, as well as, again, just a review of some of the resources and any additional requests that you all have of information that you would like us to research and share with you for our next time coming to see you. And I believe that's all we have for tonight, so thank you very much.
That was a lot, and I appreciate the work that the Office of Teaching and Learning has done so far with this great shift, moving from our standards to the Steel standards. What we were trying to do is to give you some information and to really bring you up to date with what we are working on as a school district, and to let you know that there are free resources out there, which we had shared with you in our newsletter. And SoFi is a resource that is free, correct? I'm sorry. Say it again. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm saying it wrong. The resource that is free. SIAD Open SIAD. Yes. Thank you. And it is. Oh, and Siri's talking to me. And so what our department is trying to do is to utilize resources that are free to be able to take some, strain off of what they have to do with regards to the work coming up. I believe that they had shared with our curriculum chairs as well. So we're going to give you a little bit more information come the next meeting. But at this time, does anyone have any questions on what was presented tonight? Mr. Brophy.
Can we go back to slide 21 for a second? Very interesting slide. Yep, that's not it. Keep going. Oh, you can't see the numbers? Okay. Neither can I. But that's it there. Okay. I understand that the move from singular approach to a wide, varied approach, and I get that, but how are you going to not get off in tangents and endless loops when you're having discussions like that, and because it takes away from singularly focused. So how are you going to look at that? Like, you get on, you can very easily get on tangents when you bring this many people in and this many different approaches, and also you can get into a loop by doing that. So I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on that.
Well, one of the things with these new standards are we really want all students to have that opportunity to construct their learning and their understanding. So it's important, we really think it is important to give them that voice and that opportunity. So I think that's the focus, that's what is important. When we're looking at resources, when we're looking at curriculums, there are a lot of guiding documents that help teachers, because this is new for every teacher in the state of Pennsylvania, not just our teachers. This is literally new for everyone. So there are resources out there that really help guide that shift in instruction and how to make sure we're guiding students so they're building the knowledge while we're honoring that voice that they have and that ability to construct their own meaning and understanding. But there's definitely guidance for teachers, and I think.
Yeah, I would just say it's written as a storyline. They often refer to it as a storyline. So while students are, the M&M experiment was a great example. In fact, I saw the picture of it. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way this happens. And I tested it out at the Ed Center with some of our central admin team. And literally, the questions that started coming up. Now, what happens from that moment of people starting to ask questions after making their observations is, as the teacher, I know where this storyline's supposed to go. So while there are these tangents that happen, there are connections that might happen later, and I know what has to happen next. So I'm gathering the questions that we've come up with, and we talk about what we might want to explore, what we think the best path might be, but I know where it's going. So I still guide it, yes, absolutely. So there's intent and purpose behind what happens next. It's just we're getting students to come to the conclusion that this is something we need to look at. Well, how are we going to do that? So it's really getting students to own some of that, but I still control ultimately where it goes.
Yeah, I like the part of going, you're teaching critical thinking, which is what we're looking for, but I just want to make sure that you know how critical thinking can get at some point in time.
Yes.
Like, here's the answer, but everybody's over here. So,
And the teacher remains a very important part of the classroom to guide that learning and guide that discussion.
I just want to
Yes.
understand how you're planning on doing that, since you are still guiding.
Yes,
and you're still
absolutely.
going to be there at certain spots to direct back. And that's pretty much what I'm looking for.
And
Great question.
Yep, and one of the things that we showed the teachers on February 16th after we did the M&M activity, and they saw how on a very elementary level, with the M&Ms, you could guide that conversation. Then we actually had also shared with them, we had a couple recent Boyertown graduates who are currently research scientists, and we had them share in their real world jobs how they use those science and engineering practices every day in their work to help the teachers see that connection as well, so that we can help prepare our students for those connections.
One of them may have had the last name of Landis. we used our resources.
Mr. Brophy, don't forget too that good instructional practice comes back to an instructional target and the guiding force and the funneling in that direction. So this is just a more strategic way of getting to that particular end product.
I'm just looking at the point of where do you say, okay, guys, you've taken this far enough. Now we're going to
That's
go this
classroom,
way.
educational, instructional experience.
Yes, yeah. Just want to make.
Yeah, and I will say Mrs. Moyer was so curious, we had to get Skittles to make an attempt at an experiment. I let her get out of control with that one, though.
On page 2, are all three of those, are they links? Because I'm not able to get into the website, or is it just going to the PDE website to find that?
They're all links. Let me just get back to it. They are all links, and you should be able to get to all of them. The PDE website, the one in the middle, one of the links that's on that page goes directly to the Steels Hub.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stout.
Okay, I'm not able to open it on my computer, so I just want this to look at later.
Yep, right there's the
Can
Skills
you make
Hub link.
sure that we get those 3 links sent to us? Because I don't know if anyone else is having that problem.
Sure.
You're not getting it? Okay. And then the other question for Mrs. Torsia would be, is this what we viewed, Mr. Zawada, maybe you know, up at Albright when you had, maybe you don't, Mr., is that similar? I think that's similar to what
It was just bringing in
the hands-on
the
kind of
hands-on
thing,
type
yeah,
of thing, but I
something
don't know
like
if it
that.
was included with
I think you're referring to
Okay.
Total Experience Learning at Albright.
Is that what it was called? Okay. So is it somewhat like that? Because it looked like the kids were writing everything down and journaling, and then the teacher was overseeing.
They use a lot of the inquiry-based approach to the things that they do at Albright with
Okay.
Total Experience Learning.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
And great job.
There's no one signed up for public comment period number 1, so at this time we're looking for you to approve February 27, 2024 Board of School Directors meeting minutes as presented.
Mr. Brad Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Zawada,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under the superintendent's consent agenda, I'm looking for the approval of the second reading of policies 137, 137.1, 137.2, 137.3. Second reading for the approval of policies 001, 105.2, 200, 202, 204, 214, 216.1, 217, 221, 233, and 810. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Brad Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove, Mr. Zawada,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under the superintendent's itemized agenda, looking for the Board of School Directors to approve the following overnight student trips as listed.
Zawada moves.
Mr. Brad Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Zawada,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Next, for the Board of School Directors to approve the first reading of policy 006.1, attendance at meetings via electronic communications for first reading, and to move it forward to the March 12th, 2024 Board of School Directors meeting for second reading approval.
Zawada seconds.
I would like some of that taken out, and I'd like a clarification. It says extraordinary circumstances. I want to know what that means. And I would like to take it out that the board president can shut down a participant if they can't understand. I don't know how, I can't see how it's reading, but I know you all know what I mean. If they can't, if the person cannot be heard the whole time. Because I'm sure everybody agrees, we have very bad IT, whatever is happening to our stuff. I'm not the only one that had problems. And I don't think it's fair that somebody can't participate if it's not their problem, that they can't hear us at the other end. So I would like to take that out, please.
Can we kind of table this till we try that new piece of equipment that we have and see if that's better? And this was tabled also, so we should have brought it back from the table before we even did anything, because this was tabled at the last meeting.
Okay, if it was tabled, there should be a motion to bring it back to the table. Okay, then we need to have a motion to bring it back to the table, but from what you're arguing, ultimately you want to have it tabled and you want it to remain tabled.
Only because
You don't have to just, I'm just saying that
I'm
you
just-
want it
right.
to remain tabled.
I want to see what happens when we use that piece of equipment that Mrs. Torsia has gotten or had or whatever.
If the board is comfortable with that, we don't need to take an action. We can just reach a consensus that this will remain tabled until we bring it back to the table at a future meeting.
I just would like to bring to the attention that our current policy that we have in place, 006.1, which was last revised July 14th, 2020, in it, it says that a school director who attends a meeting through electronic communications shall be considered present only if the school director can hear everything said at the meeting and all those attending the meeting can hear everything said by the school director and other participants addressing the board. If the board president determines either condition is not occurring, the board president shall terminate the school director's attendance through electronic communications. That is what is in our current policy right now. So I just wanted to point that out, that has been in place since July 14th, 2020.
I realize that, but I would still like to see it changed. I can't get more than 3 minutes to talk. I don't want to be shut off because communications isn't good.
We could try the other conference. We could try the machine. But what are we gonna do in the future if someone we can't hear them, we're voting? How does that work?
Then we have to go from there, but let's try that system first.
That's fair. That's what the consensus is. You wanna show hands or you wanna vote?
You could do simply a show of hands to reflect, to continue the table.
To the next meeting, or how long are we going to continue this? I mean,
Until you bring it back.
okay, so we
until you-
bring the new device in and we try it out?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, next we have the solicitor appointment for fiscal year 24-25. We are looking for each year, the Board of School Directors appoints a district solicitor for the next fiscal year. Administration is recommending the firm of Fox Rothschild LLP for the time period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, based upon the following.
There's a lot of moves.
My Tuesday night will be open.
Mr. Zawada with the first. Was there a second? Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove. Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I guess my Tuesday nights are taken again. Okay, well, I thank you, I appreciate that. This is number 46.
Next, we have the administration recommends approving the annual renewal of the lease agreement with the YMCA program for the 24-25 school year. The negotiated revenue from the YMCA for 24-25 is a total of $6,060, a flat rate of $3,030 per building for the entirety of the summer camp. The district solicitor has previously reviewed this agreement.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Second.
Discussion?
Nope. Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove. Yes. Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff.
No.
Ms. Nyman.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we're looking for the Board of School Directors to approve the YMCA before and after school program for the 24-25 school year as presented.
Bottom moves.
I'm just questioning if we've had any issues on any of the schools that they've been doing any damage to or anything we need to be aware of.
I have spoken to Mr. Shield, and there is nothing that has been brought to his attention. There's nothing been brought to my attention, and I'm assuming nothing was, Mr. Stout is saying there's nothing been brought to his attention. We're typically the ones that hear if there is something that's going on. Ms. Denicola, have you heard anything? No.
I voted no before, and I'm going to again because we're not charging enough to keep up with inflation, and we're charging organizations that are trying to give our children activities after school a lot more money than this. And I know what parents are paying for daycare, so I have to vote no on this. Thank you.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove. Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff.
No.
Ms. Nyman.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next, we're looking for the Board of School Directors to approve the purchase of employee computers from Dell Technologies under PEPM competitive contract number C0000010240003.
Nyman moves. Do we have the money to cover all of this?
We do, and as previously discussed, each year we will be replenishing the funds that have been used for this purchase.
I had asked for information on this item, and I didn't get it, so I'm going to have to vote no.
I believe he wanted the number of students and the number of teachers and student population, which is about 6,400. The number of our professional staff is 477, and then our administration was another 22.
It's on the, it was on the budget, it was on here last time. Look.
Right, and I figured you were going to ask that question so that Mr. Fight could assist that answer.
How many administration did you say?
Don't quote me, I think my number was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
31. It's,
Mrs. Deeroff was asking something with respects to the particular computer that you're looking, I know. She's-
What it was called. What page is that on?
It's on page 12.
Looking to see what a USB hub monitor was? Okay, Mr. Fight?
Yes, that's a docking station which is contained within the monitor, so there would no longer need to be two different pieces of equipment, a monitor and a dock. All of those are contained within the same unit. No, it would be for administrative level employees only. We do not give these to teachers. Teachers have their own presentation devices within the classroom technology. This is so that they can dock their laptop and work off of a 24-inch monitor versus working off of a 13 or 14-inch display on the laptop. It also gives them the opportunity to have multiple screens on the same device. Correct. They can use that in multiple ways. No problem. Thank you.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff. Ms. Nyman.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
For a motion for the Board of School Directors to approve the personnel agenda items as presented.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
I have a question first. I'm looking at the resignations. You have 2 people resignate, were here very short periods of time. Is there any reason for that?
I don't have that information, and Mr. Horn was on via Zoom. Can he respond, Mr. Stout? Okay. We'll provide that information to you, Mr. Brophy.
I'm just looking at somebody who's here for like a couple months and then 3 years. I'm not used to seeing that. So just to.
Oh, Mr. Shield, do you have the answer to that question? Come on up to the microphone.
Yeah, the lead custodian at playground. Most of the lead custodian that we for only pretty short period of time.
Yeah, so I spoke with him on multiple occasions, and the hours were not conducive to his lifestyle because he coached. I offered him other hours. He said that wasn't going to work with his family life and decided to choose employment where he could get day shift. Okay.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Deeroff.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman.
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Panarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
There's no one signed up for public comment period number 2, so we'll have board comment. Mr. Updegrove?
Yes, I think that policy, what is 006 that we were just talking about, that was basically, put into place because, as a board member, you should be here representing your district. I think that's what you were trying to get across, is that policy. Am I wrong about that?
Anybody from policy want to talk
It was
about
put in there so the board member could be part of the meeting and be active in the meeting. Not that there's a disturbance that we can't hear or, or give them the ability to discuss in the meeting, because there was too much of a delay. There was too much sound breaking up. So we were looking to make it where basically it was more formal, where we'd have either the machine we're talking about or go to a Zoom type thing, like Mr. Hahn's on right now, but just to use a cell phone doesn't work. We proved it that one night. It was breaking up and there was a sound delay. If maybe, so that's the reason we kind of do it. We did it for that particular, for a member to be able to be involved in the meeting, not to penalize anyone.
Okay, I want to thank the board for agreeing to keep that tabled. I would really like to try that piece of equipment before we make a decision on that. And that being said, Mr. Sultanic, do you remember this? We haven't had one of these meetings in probably at least 4 years. 3-4 years. I can't find my latest one, but I am recommending that we do one. I think this board really needs to understand And it's a executive session workshop type thing where Mr. Sultani comes in and talks to us. And I'm not looking for a 1 hour talk. I'm looking for a 2-3 hour talk. Because I really, really think we need this. I know Mrs. Deeroff had it because she was on before. I've had it. I don't think anybody else has gone through that. I still think Mr. Sultanic does an excellent job, and I still would like Mr. Sultanic. He really breaks it down, and he does an excellent job, and I think this board really, really needs to go through that.
Okay, I just want to thank the students from the Life Skills Program, Ivan, Violet, and Michaela. You did a great job representing your Life Skills class. Also, I wanted to bring to the attention of the board the Red Cross agreement. I had asked for this about 6 weeks back, but I have been really busy with things. I'd like you to review that, if you could take the time. In that agreement, it's pretty open-ended, and I may not be understanding everything perfectly, but in there, our 3 largest schools are being called to be used in the time of a disaster. Now, I don't have a problem with that at all. I am a humanitarian. I would want to help in any way we could. But if the disaster is not here, and we are able to send our kids to school, my biggest question is, are we going to be able to continue to do that, or how much of our facilities are we going to lose? Is there going to be a real problem with that? And none of that is really outlined in the agreement. Plus, they use our staff, and I'm sure that they checked with the head of food services to see if they would be available to use our food if needed. There are plenty of facilities in the area that have the commercial kitchen and the big auditoriums and the gyms and all of those spaces that the Red Cross needs, the bathrooms, the classrooms and things like that. I wouldn't want to close down the school if we could stay open. That's my biggest concern about this. So I just would like to put this on the next meeting for a discussion, if others feel the same way, because I feel like it's necessary to talk about. It's a little open-ended. It's just not clear on our responsibilities. I mean, we're opening up the school and to the Red Cross, and we're going to be responsible for a lot while, the people that need the help are here. But what happens to our kids?
Upcoming meetings, we have March 19th, Board of School Directors meeting at 7 p.m., Boyertown Education Center, April 9th, Committee of the Whole. That meeting will be held at Washington Elementary School at 7, and April 23rd, our Board of School Directors meeting, again here at the Boyertown Education Center.
I had a question about the Red Cross. Did you read the article that Ole had not renegotiated their contract with the Red Cross?
I did just read that on Sunday, yes.
Okay. And you
Yes,
know the
I'm
reason
familiar
why
with
that
it.
was?
I saw their reasons. Mine are a little bit different, some of them, but I didn't want to get into all that.